My name is Anita Eliason. I'm a business advisor with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center in Springfield, and Amy Shapiro's on board, the business development director at the Franklin County CDC. Samalat Hogan, who is the director of our offices in Springfield and our esteemed speaker, but I won't give that away. I'll let Amy introduce Francis to us. So we're here today to talk about the positive approach to business debt and credit repair. And this has come at the end of a whole series we've done on marketing. We called it the Marketing Toolbox series. And I just show you the slide because if any of these topics are of interest to you, all of this content exists on our YouTube channel, so you can access any of these. It was about 21 webinars that were about marketing. And then in the beginning of January, we're going to do a similar toolbox series, and it's going to be focused on finance and operations. So, and they're brought to you by a collaboration of all the technical services providers in the area, including the Franklin County CDC, which is Amy Shapiro, Common Capital, Emil is on the line, SCORE, Lynn Gendron's here today, the Center for Women in Enterprise, and our offices throughout Massachusetts, which includes a specialty office, sorry, I went ahead, for procurement technical assistance, which is government contracting, and also the Export Center. And by our stakeholders, the University of Massachusetts Eisenberg, the SBA, and the State of Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development and America's SBDC. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. I'm very excited to introduce Francis to you all. I've known her for many years as a tremendous resource to our community, who has somebody who has not only personal experience in this topic, but extensive training and credentials, has become an innovator with new models and helps people solve problems all the time, and with outcomes where people can live more comfortably every day and really understand what their limitations are, what they create new assumptions for their future, and transcend how they live on a day-to-day basis. Now, that doesn't, I'm not really talking about the details of Francis's past. That's just my impression of Francis. I've met people who she's worked with and have seen firsthand the positive impact she's had. So I'm very excited to introduce her to you. And I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from Francis and a little bit more about her than what I've just said. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Francis.
Wow, thank you very much, Amy. What a lovely introduction. I still have the poll on my screen, though. Can I move it?
You can just exit out. You close it up.
I'm hoping that's it for my technical problems here. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody who came to listen live. And I know this will get streamed and will get watched again later on. And I just want to say, for anybody that is wondering how come we don't have thousands of people here, I would say because it's a very hard thing to discuss. It's very difficult for people to discuss their finances or to even face what situation they're in, even though we might be feeling like we don't know where to turn and we need help. So this is the toughest part, is to reach out and say, okay, I think I might need to go get some help somewhere. And I'm sure you see this as well at the CDC, because it's got to be tough for somebody to say, we're so prideful. We always want to say, I can do this myself. Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to be able to do this myself. And I think it's the underlying root of why we are so bad at money in general. Some people are better than others, but most people will say, I never learned this stuff. I didn't learn it from my parents. I took economics in school, but I don't know anything about how to do this sort of day-to-day finance. So because of that, I think what happens, especially for small business people, and I am one and have been one for most of my adult life, I've been self-employed, is that sometimes people get into businesses because they were passionate about an idea or because they thought they were going to make a lot of money or for whatever reason that inspires us to start a business. But it doesn't come with, you don't start a business and get as an appendage this lesson in finance that you're supposed to have. So sometimes we're very successful because we're good with money and we're good with business. And sometimes we are successful in spite of ourselves. And sometimes we're just not successful at all. We don't know why. And sometimes that's our fault and sometimes it's not. And right now, with a pandemic, for a lot of business people, whatever you thought you were doing in business has changed. And for some businesses, it's changed for the better and they're profiting on whatever their product is or whatever their service is. We happened to be one of those businesses that people needed us more now, even than before. And I thought we were maxed out before, but now they needed help with, what do I do about my retirement money? What do I do about my debt? How do I keep my business afloat? I've never made a budget and I'm 50. What do I do? So that's where we've been fortunate and have been able to help a lot of people and continue to do so. And we've learned a lot in that as well. We just keep reinventing. Okay, people are telling us they have this problem. What do we do to solve that? And we create a tool to solve it if we can. But a lot of businesses are really struggling. And I get calls or we get emails every day from somebody who says, I had this business, it was doing great. Then along came Amazon, along came a pandemic, along came whatever. And I'm shoveling money at it. I'm throwing what I'm afraid is good money after bad. Do I keep doing that? How do I do that? If I make it through this pandemic, what's on the other side of it for me? And so I hope that I'll be able to answer some of those questions today with a sort of general broad brush. But I'd love to know if there's some place that you or anybody listening to us would like me to start about this. If you have a question or if you have an area that you'd like me to start discussing, because we have plenty of time.
Well, maybe I'll just ask you a question first while we're waiting. Mike, you kind of touched on it just now, but I'm just wondering what you see as the trends between the pre-COVID and the COVID now. And I appreciate that you identified that. Is there anything else that comes to mind about what people are saying about like this period of time that we're in? Because we don't know how long we're in this.
Yeah, I think there are some trends that are sort of common normally, which seem to have heightened in my estimation. One of them is I need to shift my debt around. I better get some 0% credit cards, or I better refinance my house, or how am I going to get another business loan? One of the scariest things for me, Amy, has been people calling me and watching the numbers about the number of mortgages that are being taken out. And when I talk to people, what they say are things like, the scary things they say are, gee, we wanted to buy a house or we wanted to upgrade, and we think we have to do it now because we're not sure we're going to be employed in the future. To me, that is staggering. Staggering. I understand why people do it. That's why the mortgage numbers were what they were in the market recently. But it scares the dickens out of me because I'm thinking, if you're not sure you're going to be employed in the future and you're running at refinancing now because you're afraid you won't qualify later, what are you trapping yourself into? So the same thing is true with people taking on additional debt. Boy, I'm really afraid that I'm not going to be able to make it. And I've got these 0% credit cards over here. I'm going to use those to keep my business afloat or to keep my finances paid. It's very tempting. It's 0% money right now. But if you don't have a way to pay it off, it's going to a higher interest rate. And I can tell you that for a lot of people, that has already been done. And we have something that we hope will help people to not suffer from the fallout from that. But that's a real trend that I see, are people saying, where am I going to get money to survive for right now? And another one is people who did get money, stimulus money, that, the government said was going to go back out and make everything wonderful are hoarding it. It's not going back out into the economy right now, as far as I can tell. People, and at my recommendation very often, you have that money, I know you want to throw it at debt. Okay, so here's a good example of something like that. Somebody might call me and say, I have just gotten $20,000 in a PPP loan. And I think it might be going to get forgiven. And I've got this $20,000 credit card. I just want to pay off the credit card. Is that the right thing to do? And so then we have to have a conversation about, why did you get the loan? What about the credit card? So we don't make these decisions as cookie cutter decisions. Once somebody's information is in our system, we make them within that comprehensive environment, so we can see all of what they've got, rather than, I dislike the programs that just say, if you don't fit in this box, check there. Yeah, everybody is unique. But here's the example I was trying to get to. I have a $20,000 credit card. Do I throw this $20,000 loan at it? Because very simply, the loan is at 2%, 0, whatever, and my credit card's at 22%.
Right.
Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Until you start to realize that $20,000, putting out that little fire of a credit card that you think is so painful, that $20,000 credit card probably has about a $400 a month payment. So the $20,000 that you're going to give up from your loan, which you got to help your business, to pay off that debt because emotionally you hate it and it looks so awful because it's at 22%, only bought you $400 a month. Short term, we're thinking, okay? So it only buys you $400 a month. Now, if $400 a month isn't enough to solve your problem, what just happened? You got a loan to float your business, you gave it up to a high interest rate credit card, and you still can't make ends meet. Not the best way to do it. So in terms of trends, that's what I see, the same sort of trends. I have money, I have debt, I want to throw it at the debt and put it out. We ignore things like building of cash reserves. What would save you in a pandemic? Oh, I don't know. Cash reserves. Okay. So we have to find a way to balance that. How much money we send out the door to debt, how much money goes to living expenses, how much money goes to emergency cash reserves, a vacation fund, retirement, all of that. If we don't get that balance, we won't survive long-term. So I'm sure that we'll get into it more, but for people who have already racked up that debt, I don't want them to despair. You might have noticed in working with us that we are all about positive movement about money management, which does not mean we're delusional. We're not, it's not irrational exuberance. We are, in fact, confident that when people are proactive, they can take steps, no matter what their situation is right now, to make it better. And whether that outcome is what they expect it to be in the beginning, we don't know until we get there. But it really saddens me to see so many small business people, and large business people for that matter, business owners, in this environment where all the hard work, all the sweat equity the rug has just been pulled out from under them. The restaurants are breaking my heart. I mean, I can't believe how resilient some restaurants have been in managing what they have to just in the kitchen or in the restaurant itself, and trying to transition to takeout and all of that. But still, they're struggling, they're suffering, and some are not going to be able to reopen. So yeah. So one more trend point, I guess, is bankruptcy. We get calls about, is it the right thing for me to do to file a bankruptcy? And it's really unfortunate that so many people are considering that and jumping to that. And we should at some point talk a little bit today about whether that could help somebody or not, and how to make that decision. But the one thing I do want to tell people right now is that bankruptcy, and I have to say as a disclaimer, I'm not an attorney and I'm not an accountant. Bankruptcy will only wipe out your unsecured debt. So if what you really have is mortgages and car loans and student loans and business loans and 401k loans, and you owe the tax man, bankruptcy isn't going to help you. And if you earn above a certain amount, you may not qualify for it anyway. So that's one of the places where I see people getting stuck, is they say, this is really hurting, and I never thought I'd say this, but I'm ready. I'll file a bankruptcy. And they see a bankruptcy attorney, and the attorney says, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're going to qualify. And now they're stuck. What do they do? So, I'm hoping that we'll get some people with specific problem-solving questions that we can problem solve. But I did make a template, a sort of case study for this webinar, especially with some general debt in there and a general picture of income that might feel normal to people, so that they can kind of see how we do what we do and what might be available to them.
Frances, when you talk about thinking about bankruptcy, we have a question in the chat where someone's saying, I'm a business owner. I'm trying to manage my personal credit cards, my business credit, and what are the best ways to stay on top of both of those? And also, to your point about people leaping to the idea of bankruptcy, what impact does that have both on one's business credit and personal credit?
Good questions. Okay, so I'll take the last part first if I could. I feel like I'm on a game show. I'll answer the last part first. Okay, what effect does it have on your business and personal credit? So again, I'm not an attorney, but if you're in a large corporation or you happen to be a C corporation and you have not personally guaranteed that debt, you should talk to your attorney, because you may be able to file a bankruptcy under the business, a chapter 11, whatever. You may be able to file a bankruptcy under the business and not harm your personal finances. For most people that I speak to, and I'm assuming maybe most of the people that are in this meeting and who come to you, our business is us. It's left hand, right hand. We're putting personal funds into the business. We can't get a business loan because it's a small corporation, so we have to sign for it. So you can't really separate them. And so if you file a bankruptcy, it is going to harm your personal credit as well. But you should really talk to an attorney about this. The one thing I don't want people to do is to avoid making the decision about filing a bankruptcy out of fear. I don't want them to make any decisions out of fear. It's the worst place to make your financial choices from. So if you're feeling like, boy, I'm really considering bankruptcy, if you've gotten to that point where it seems rational to you, like it might be a way out, talk to your attorney, because there are a number of things that could be done. One little trick that I can use sometimes to salvage clients in business is, we have two partners, husband, wife, two business partners, doesn't matter how it is, but most of the debt is in one person's name. Most of the large debt, one person is responsible for. They're the one who signed it, and the other one hasn't. We can file a bankruptcy on the person who has large debt and survive on the other one's credit for a year or two while I rebuild their credit. And people don't often think of that. It takes some trust, because, okay, if I'm the partner with a large debt, I have to sacrifice my credit, and I have to trust that we're going to be able to get more loans and survive on the other person's credit. But if so, then that might be a trick that you could use. I've forgotten what the first part was. Oh, how do you keep track of your personal and business finances? Best way to stay on top of that.
But specifically credit card debt, Frances, was the question.
Credit card debt.
Yeah.
So when we say the best way to stay on top of it, that's pretty broad. I don't know if they mean to stay organized with it, or if they mean which do they pay off first. If I ask that, will they chat back and tell us?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. And I'm wondering if you would like to come on. Let me just see.
Oh, that would be great if they'll do it. We can have an exchange.
Here we go.
Excuse me.
Marja, I'm looking for Marja.
I just allowed her to talk. She can now unmute herself.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Marja, would you like to ask your question to Frances?
Hi, Marja.
You're
I can't
muted,
hear her.
Marja.
There she is now.
Hi, Marja.
Okay, I guess
Nope.
doesn't look like it's gonna work out. She's
Okay.
muted, but maybe
Well,
her microphone is not working.
I'll take it as multiple choice then. Okay. Which
Okay.
debt should you pay off first? Well, it has to do with what's going to harm your credit and what's going to be most important to you. So I tell people if they're looking at personal debt to do it in this order. Your car gets paid first, your car, because you're going to need it to get around, and they will repossess a car faster than they will foreclose on your home. Now we're talking about crisis management decisions here. This is not where we start our conversations normally, but we have to stop the bleeding. This is what we do. We pay our car first so we can keep it and be able to get a job and get back and forth to work and get to hospitals and all of that. Secondly, we pay our house. We want a roof over our heads, and that's a secured loan, and it's going to damage our credit drastically if we don't pay it for our house. And then after that, we start to look at things like credit cards and other kinds of loans, because a credit card is an unsecured debt. And although it looks really bad on your credit to not pay it, they can't come and take your house from you about it. The worst they can do is take you to court, get a judgment, make a payment arrangement, blah, blah, blah. You can go on and on and on about this. But it's a last priority debt if you really have to make choices. Although I will say, and it's not a popular thing to say, medical bills even go behind that, because medical bills will take very small payments. But I do want you, if you have any of these bills, to be really proactive and reach out to the creditors or ask for someone's help and try and make an arrangement as early as possible, because very often you can salvage your credit just by being proactive. And that's really important. Don't stick your head in the sand. And then about ways to keep them organized, we've built a system at Hug Your Student Debt, which soon you'll find at hugyourmoney.com, but right now at hugyourstudentdebt.org. We've built a system to keep your debt in check, both business and personal. Keep it organized. We'll help you as a coach to organize it and pay it on time and pay it down really quickly, even using the same dollars. And we've also just launched a budget system called Hug Your Budget. And that is dynamically in our portal. And it's the coolest thing because, in fact, I could probably demo it for you if you'd like to see it. But it has a personal tab and a business tab. And all you do is enter your expenses in either one. And it's super easy. You just type in like cell phone and it will find it. You put in $65, November 2nd, click save, and it saves it in the right place. And once you've built it once, you have this nice little customized area that holds all your expenses for both your business and your personal. And then there's a review tab, and under the results tab. And under the results tab, it shows you a summary of personal, a summary of business, and what happens together. Then you get some averages off to the side, and a model month we can work collaboratively with you if you want help. But you don't have to work with us on it. You can use the tool yourself.
And we have some folks that would love to see that demo.
I can show you if you can give me a second to share my screen.
Sure.
Let me make sure I'm up and running in it.
Is this tool, does this tool cost money or is it free?
It costs money, but it's pretty affordable. So our plans start at $39.95 a month.
Yeah.
That includes.
So I would feel more comfortable if we share the link for folks to investigate and look at the plan.
Absolutely.
And then I think we can focus on some more of those strategies that we like to teach folks on how to.
Yeah, maybe the case study that you did would be a good idea, Francis.
Yeah.
Sure, that's queued up as well. So let me share my screen and I'll walk you around a little bit here.
And I'm glad you talked about what's good debt and bad debt, because I think it's really helpful. And I'm wondering if you can add, even like for a business owner who's got vendors, that they're committed to, is there a way that they can freeze those creditors or?
Okay, so if I could just run off to the side here for a second about good debt and bad debt. We did talk a little bit about that, but I want to debunk a myth. It's really important that you brought that up again, Amy. So typically I think we're taught to think good debt, mortgage, student loans, bad debt, credit cards. Yeah, we don't see it that way here. I actually have a 3-pronged test about whether it's a good debt or a bad debt. And I did a blog about it. People can text me and they'll find it, or send us a question and we'll get it. But anything, in my opinion, can be a good debt or a bad debt. Even a lousy credit card could be a good debt if it has certain criteria. And those criteria are You have to know when it's going to be paid off. It's not open-ended. Okay, I took this credit card. I know what the interest rate is. It's 3% and it's for 5 years. And I can easily afford it. It's not a stretch for me to afford the payment. And it was a need, not a want. So if you need it, and the only way you can get it is on a credit card, but you can define that it is affordable for you and when it will be paid off, I'm okay with that. And you'll see why when I demo, because the credit cards just aren't so ugly here. I'm okay with that. Would I prefer for everybody to buy things in cash? Of course, you know, but until they build up enough cash reserves, it doesn't happen. So that's a good debt, bad debt thing. Second thing you asked me, I'm sorry, was, I've forgotten it already.
The vendor, the creditors, the
Freezing.
business creditors and freezing credit,
Yeah.
freezing those contracts.
Okay, so freezing, those are two different things. Freezing your credit is a thing that you can do to protect your identity. So you can, I think it's 800-685-1111. You can fact check me on that, but I think that's the phone number for Equifax, where you can literally hit a couple of buttons on the phone. You don't even talk to a person. And you can put a freeze on your credit report. And what that will do is you will be able to unlock it when you need to get a loan, but nobody else will be able to get a loan in your name. It is a free, valuable, almost indispensable way, in my opinion, to protect your identity. I would not live a day without this personally. You can pay another company who's going to charge you monthly to protect your identity, but think about it. How does somebody steal your identity? They go to the store, they are offered a loyalty card, they get one in your name somehow, and now they start to get your identity. If they can't get to your credit report, you're pretty safe. So the only inconvenience is if you're the person at the store, you're not going to get that immediate approval for a credit card because it's locked. You either have to unlock it or you have to fill out the paper app. So that's about freezing credit. Now, freezing your creditors is another story. And I don't actually know a way to just sweep a magic wand and say, I know I owe all you folks, but I'm not paying you and you're not going to do anything to me. If you don't pay your bills, it will get to your credit. That's how that works. Unless you are proactive and you make arrangements with your creditors. There are a lot of people right now in a situation where their mortgages, for instance, are in deferment. Their payments are not being made. So that was about being proactive and calling your mortgage company and saying, I'm in trouble here. My income has been reduced because of the pandemic. I can't afford to pay my mortgage. And the mortgage company said, okay, so for 3 months at a time, we're going to let you not pay your mortgage and we're not going to harm your credit because of it. Bravo. One caveat. If this is you, if you're listening to me right now and your mortgage is in deferment, I want you to make sure that your taxes and insurance are getting paid. Because if your mortgage was escrowed, if your taxes and insurance had escrow, so when you open up your statement, it says principal and interest $800, escrow $350. That $350 was going to your taxes and your insurance. If your mortgage is in deferment, call your bank and find out, are those getting paid or can you pay them through your bank? Because what you don't want to happen is to come out the other side of this owing a lot of money in taxes because banking regulations didn't allow them to pay it for you. So check on that. That's all I would say about that. Good. Does that answer your questions? Okay. Oh, sorry, folks. Am I sharing my screen now?
Before when you were sharing your screen, it just went to a blank page. So that's why I took it down. But go ahead and try to reshare your screen.
Let's try it.
And when you talk about, Frances, using good money after bad money, a lot of businesses are in a situation right now where they're needing to invest money in a future that is unpredictable. Is there an amount of money that you would recommend people think about? Is it a percentage of what their assets are? Like, how do people do that? Because standing still is not an option, but we don't know what the result of spending the money is going to be.
Yes.
how do you decide what amount of money you're going to put towards a business that you've been running? When you talk about restaurants, people have been running the restaurant for 15 years,
Yep.
and they're going to have to spend $10,000
Yes.
doing something that they hope will bring them more business. How do you decide whether to take that plunge?
I love that you asked that question. So my answer for the moment might seem a little esoteric, but when you see how we would manage it and the tools that we put in somebody's hands, so my answer is we'd have them enter it into the system along with their income and their other information. And then they could play what if scenarios. And we would begin to see a debt to income ratio, which we use as a benchmark. I'll go into that in a second as well. Okay. But we'd be able to see what we call a safety zone. At what point are they over their safety zone? That means we've got to have a conversation, coach to client. Hey, you're in the danger zone if you do this. Are you sure you want to do that? And I may not be able to bring you back if you go that far. Or what is much more common is the people themselves are petrified. I don't think we should throw this money there. I'm afraid what's going to happen to us. And I show them how to manage it and they say, oh, well, if we do it that way, that's not so bad. And then they can relax into it. So the budget thing, I'll just show you just for a couple of minutes, but then we should get into that because that's so powerful for people. And, you know, we're not the only game in town. There are people who manage credit card debt and things like that. But I think that we are the only business that I've ever come across that does all of what we do, that manages all those different kinds of debt, including business debts and mortgages, and really does the budgeting and this comprehensive sort of financial plan. And that's what makes us unique, is that sort of hand-holding that people get when they work with a financial coach. So let me show you the budget for a second, and then we'll go take exactly what you're saying, and I'll show you how our system works, and then we'll add that, which is my favorite part. What happens if we add a debt? What happens if we add $50,000 of debt? What would happen to us? Okay, perfect.
So try sharing your screen again, but the second time when you try to share it, again, it was just a white screen.
You don't see it? Oh, no.
No, for some reason, it was just showing up the white screen. So try sharing again.
Just a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
Oh, there you go. Now we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay. So I will tell you that I am logged in to demo this on the administrative side of our software. So if you were to log in for the budget, you would see video tutorials and real instructions here. But to just demo this, I just wanted to show you how simple it is. So here's a personal tab where you could enter any of your personal expenses. The income, and this is all coming from that test case that I built. The income is already in here. It's imported from the debt portal that we started with. So as I built this test case as a business owner, and I said, I have $8,000 take home pay for me. My spouse has $4,000 take home pay, and our total income is 12 grand after taxes. It's imported it in here. So I never have to fuss with that. Although I can change it by using this little add or remove. I can add $1,000 a month because I had a better business month, and bingo, it will just save right there. Okay. So there's always ways to adjust things, but we've tried to remove as much work as possible for someone. So let's say you only have a few seconds to enter a debt. You come in here, you say, oh, I just paid my cell phone bill. You might not know what category it's under, so you type in cell, bingo, it finds it. If you did know, you could use a category and subcategory. But let's just say cell phone, $50, and we did it on whatever date. Let's pick a day today. We click save. That's it. That's all someone has to do to keep track of this stuff. They're not building a budget. They're tracking expenses. We'll help them build a budget. So here it is, cell phone, $50, and it would keep a running log. If you spent another, $80 in groceries, throw it in here just for fun, groceries. I use the search more than anything. We'll throw that in. We'll say we're going to spend it tomorrow. We're spending in the future now. I don't know if I can do that. I guess so. Okay. So here's $80 in groceries. And if the following day we spent another $30, it would raise this to 110, and the logs would show you what you spent so that you don't lose track. So it's very simple to add your expenses. And you can see there's an averages column over here. So we've eliminated all these 0 months because I don't want to say, if you're just starting, that you're averaging $50 divided by 6, right? So we get averages. And then this model month is where we can work collaboratively and help you balance your budget. And if we had something to say to you, we'd put a little note in here. And when you logged in, you would see a yellow bar. Oh, Francis is telling me I have to adjust my cell phone bill. Okay. So you would enter your personal expenses that way. If you have business expenses, you come over here. Now you said something about a vendor. Let's enter a vendor. So what do we want to call this? Cost of doing business. Yeah, let's do that. So everything has, if you didn't find the category here, you wanted to customize something, everything has an other custom. So let's call this vendor one. It could be anybody that you want it to be. And let's say we paid them $1,000 and we did it, I don't know, on the 4th, my birthday. Save. Now
We'll probably go on the contractor more than cost of doing business, but that's
that's okay. That's why I was saying you can
Yeah.
choose whatever category you wanted.
Yeah.
I just don't want to take up all day demoing this for somebody. So, so there's $1,000 in business and you have your personal stuff. So down at the bottom, you see gray is subtotals and green is total. Here's your income and then your monthly breakdown. And it will tell you, we're going to go back to debt to income ratio, but this is your total living expenses compared to your income. And so you can kind of watch those if you want. You see the same thing on the business side, except we call it gross revenue, and you see the total breakdown. But then for the person who said, how do we stay on top of this stuff? Here it is, results. All of this debt has been pulled in automatically from the debt portal. And every time something changes in the debt portal, it changes here. You never have to touch this part of the budget. It's done for you. Then your personal income, your business income, the summary, and what happens combined. So this is incredibly valuable data for us as coaches to be able to help somebody, but also I think for maybe the first time for most people, we get to see what happens with our personal finances and our business finances under one roof. And when somebody says to me, gee, we're thinking about selling the business, what will we be able to make it if we don't have that income? I'm able to look at it and say, well, let's look at what your personal expenses really were without the business income. And I can break it out instantly. So this is really, really powerful. There is a video tutorial in the client portal about it. But we're super excited about this budget. People are actually saying things to us like they never thought it could be fun to budget. So,
Well, Francis, if someone's keeping track of their business expenses, let's say in QuickBooks, right?
Yep.
And let's assume that they have a pretty good handle on what their debt is as an individual. What is the percentage that when you talk about, can you speak more about debt to income ratio? Because that's a number that if people are keeping track in any way, even manually, what is that number they're trying to achieve?
you bet. First of all, just a quick thing about QuickBooks. If you're tracking your expenses in QuickBooks and you have a really great breakdown, you can use this budget historically, previous 6 months, or you just put the right date in. So if you could go back last month and put in your whole budget, bingo, we'd have instant results. Now, debt to income ratio, very important question. Actually, let's go to the illustration here for a second. So this is a case I built for the FCCDC entrepreneur, okay? And in this case, we'll go over this illustration more in detail, but to get right to your debt to income ratio, we give this little graph. Here's 30.43%. Now, what this really means, debt to income ratio, what it really means is of your gross income, your income before taxes, how much of that is going to your monthly debt payments? So I like to see that number at 36% or less, because I know at that level, people can live a normal lifestyle and we can get them out of debt quickly. We do it all day. At 42 to 43%, it's still doable, but it's tight. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's really tight. Anything over that, we're looking at, okay, how do we get them into a more affordable range? Can we shift some debt around? Do they need to file a bankruptcy? Can we increase income? At that point, if you're at more than 43, 44%, I'd say 43% is probably top for me. At that point, that's when I'm starting to say, okay, we need plan B. And then we move to a different set of skills about how do we adjust things? Can we refinance? Can we move things? Whatever. But typically 36 to 42 to 43%. And I like it at 36% or less if it's possible.
So Francis, if someone owns I'm making this up. If they own a coffee shop and they're bringing in $3,000 a month and they owe, their debt is $1,000, for example, they're kind of at about a third. You're saying they can afford comfortably to take on a little bit more debt.
Yes, or save 6% of their money. So they could, yes, they could afford comfortably to take on a little more debt. Now, again, these are broad brushstrokes.
Right.
So the next question I would ask them is there something I'm missing? Do we have childcare expense? Do we have alimony coming in or out of the household? What aren't we seeing by just taking the simplistic picture of debt to income? But you asked about debt to income, and it is an important starting point. So yes, so in this case, I built this case and they're at 30.43% debt to income ratio. If I were speaking to this person, we would have a conversation about how does money feel in your household? I can tell you what it looks like from the numbers, and I'm usually a pretty good judge of that based on the numbers. But they might come back and say, boy, you might be telling us we've got a 30% DTI, but I don't know where you're getting that. I mean, we're putting our groceries on credit cards. And that would be a time for us to chat about, okay, the leaks are probably in one of two places. If I'm looking at a 30% debt to income ratio and you're telling me you can't make ends meet, then either there's too much money coming out in deductions, more money than normal in deductions. So a lot of times teachers suffer from this with this 11% mandatory retirement deduction. It's such a bite out of their paycheck. They sometimes will need a lower debt to income ratio to feel the same about their finances as someone else. So I would say either the deductions coming out of the paychecks or it's leaks in the budget. And I will tell you, it's usually both, but almost always leaks in the budget. And that doesn't mean that, people can't go out and have a latte, but it does mean that they probably have not faced what they're really spending. And a good month of just tracking their expenses this way, month, 2 months, 3 months, really eye-opening. Yeah.
So what I want to jump in here for a second, because I think that it's a lot like dieting. It's changing the mindset. And, look at all the diet programs there are out in the world, and people, have a very hard time with it. And this is, to me, it's a mindset. So how do you counsel people? What are tips that you say to people about how to make this shift?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, we say it's a lot like dieting because, if you wanted to lose weight, doing it on your own, everybody knows how to count calories. But how many of us are successful at that long term? But if somebody's cooking food for you or they're, dogging you saying, get on the treadmill, okay, you're going to do a little better with it. So that's what we do. Yes, we have a system that was built on debt acceleration, which is not a new idea. We far surpassed the simplicity of debt acceleration, but it's the accountability that people need sometimes. It's not that I'm going to tell them what to do or what not to do. That's not my job. My job is to help them live the life they want. But, if they reach out to us for help, so just yesterday, I had to give somebody some tough love. I got a panic-stricken phone call from somebody who can't tolerate living in the situation they're in anymore, and they want to buy a house. And they don't really want to buy a house. They know it's a hot market, but they're calling me to talk them off the ledge. And I'm saying, okay, let's look at how can we solve this problem about your living situation? Because what we don't want to do is take you out of one stressful situation and put you into another, because guess what? You're going to overeat and it's going to be in the form of debt. And so that analogy is really great. So we don't tell people how to manage this. What's
the first step? Like step one.
Okay.
Because once they buy into step one, I would think that, the step two comes pretty easily.
Yeah. So step one, really, really simple. You go to hugyourstudentdebt.org and you click on the Get Started link and you fill out a little, I'm sorry, it's not on this screen. Let me see if I can show you right here.
But for somebody that's not necessarily going to use, Hug Your Debt, use the software.
Oh, if they're not using our program?
Yeah. What's some advice or some tips that somebody would just take step one, whatever it is?
Absolutely. Okay. So step one is you have to face it. You don't have to face it for 4 hours tonight. Don't make it a big, don't make it drudgery. Bite this thing in little tiny pieces. I tell people, you know, if you're not ready to click the Get Started Now button, that's okay. Gather your statements together. Let them sit on your desk and put something in your calendar that says, today I'm going to gather my statements together, because that's all I can tolerate, and then reward myself. I did that part. So now I get to have pizza, whatever it is. And then step 2 is, okay, now I'm actually going to put those down on a sheet, or I'm going to fill them out on the website, or whatever I'm going to do. And so go at it in little pieces like that. I'm not going to build a budget, for instance. Instead, I'm going to start tracking my expenses. And I'm going to try to get through a whole day of tracking my expenses accurately. And then I'm going to try to get through 2 days. And when I get through a week, I'm going to try to do another week. And then when I get to a month, okay, I've tracked my expenses for a month. I'm going to total them up. I'm going to reward myself that now I've done a whole month of this. And I'm going to do it again. So the biggest problem, I think, Amy, is that we're so fearful of money. All the bad decisions we've ever made about money, I bet if you go back over your life, you will find that they were all emotionally based. I bought that car because I really wanted it. I did this thing because I was afraid to do it. Whatever it was, instead of it, money's math. You know, you have to find a way that you can feel comfortable beginning a conversation with yourself about money that doesn't begin with an emotional statement. So when I'm speaking to clients in person and they're saying to me, I listen a lot more than I talk. Even today, I'm talking a lot, but they say things to me like, well, I feel like we earn a lot of money and I don't know where that money's going. And I know where we spend too much. You know, I'm afraid we eat out too much. Things like that. Once we get them on board, I say, now your job is to start changing your conversation with yourself about money. And the next time you say, I feel like we make a lot of money, where is it going? You back up and you say, let's take the second part of that question first. Where is my money going? It doesn't matter how you feel about it. Money doesn't care how you feel. Money cares about the bottom line. So step 1, really, if you can't face doing this yourself, if you're feeling like you need some help somehow, get it. Call somebody. Yeah.
That's great. I totally get it. And my other follow-up question is, there's a lot of people out there that say that they'll do credit repair.
Yeah.
And there's you know, there's some not so good choices that are in it for different motives. And I'm wondering if you can speak to how to make it just what that landscape looks like.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, there are some places that will do some work for you, and that may or may not be worth you paying for. So for instance, they will take on the job of sending letters to your creditors, to your credit reporting bureaus, disputing your debts. And you may not want that job. And so you may be willing to pay a company to do that. But make no mistake about it. I have not come across a company yet that is doing anything for your credit that you cannot do for yourself for, what's my favorite price? Free, for free, if you just know how to do it. So crash course in credit repair, pull your credit reports. Step number 1, get your credit reports at annualcreditreport.com. Don't go to any of the other things that are all, just go to annualcreditreport.com that is directly at the credit reporting bureaus and pull your own credit reports from all 3 bureaus. Go through them with a fine-tooth comb and look for anything that is derogatory. They'll actually be sectioned off, derogatory credit, and it will tell you. Then, if you can prove any of that stuff is wrong, even if you can't for that matter, dispute it right there online. You type in, 20 words. Hey, I don't recognize this debt, or this debt, I was told that if I paid this, they wouldn't report me as late, and they have. And then the credit reporting bureaus will go back to your creditors, ask them to verify the debt. They'll come back and say whether it was real or not. And if you win your side of the court case, it will come off in a month. And next month, you'll pull your credit and your credit will look better. So again, we help people do these kinds of things. We don't charge them for credit repair or anything like that, but we'll help coach people through it, especially how to dispute certain things. But that's one of the places where I would encourage people, try not to pay money for that. It might not be a popular answer, but I just don't think that that's a business worth people spending much money to do, because I think you really can do it yourself for free.
And Frances, we just have a few minutes left. I have a couple of questions. The
Already?
annualcreditreport.com, is that free to get your
Yes,
credit?
it is.
Okay.
You don't have to pay for your score, just get your credit reports. There's no point in buying your score and then fixing your credit. Just get your credit reports, fix it. and
Gotcha.
that's it.
Okay, perfect. And we have someone who's asked, if you own a small business, but you have student debt, should you take advantage of the no interest program that they're running till the end of the year
Yes.
and try to pay off your student debt?
Yes. Okay, if you own a small business, but you have student debt and your student loans are in deferment because they're at 0% under the COVID rules, is what I
Through
think.
the end of the year, yes.
Right. I would take advantage of that because your loans are not growing. I would not, I think what they're saying is, should they then pay off their student debt while it's at 0% so they can
Yes.
gain on it?
Yes.
Hard for me to answer that as a cherry-picked question without knowing
Okay.
what else they have.
Okay,
In our
that's fair.
system, it would prioritize the debts, and we would see whether another debt was smarter to pay before the student loan or not.
Okay,
So-
gotcha. And we have Emil here who helps with people and their finances from Common Capital. So Emil, what's your question?
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Frances. It's a very informative webinar. You mentioned in the beginning that if a person has a credit card as a business owner, let's say I'm speaking on a business owner perspective, if the business owner has a debt in his personal credit card of, you mentioned $25,000, and his interest rate is around 20%, and he's charging every month $400, and he get a forgiveness loan or any of those idle loan that from the SBA for the COVID-19. Your suggestion is to pay this debt because that's cost him $400 every month.
No.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I might have misspoken, or you might have misunderstood me, but is there more to your question?
No, this is my question. So my question is it okay to use money that I received to help my business, to use it for my personal, because this is a debt and this is me. I'm the person who owned the business, and I have this debt and it cost me this much, and I get a assistant to help my business, but I use it for my personal. Is that okay or not?
Okay, so first, I was not suggesting that you take the $25,000 business loan and pay off that credit card. I was actually saying the opposite. That credit card within, like, our system, most of our people pay less than 3% total over all their debt because we're paying off their debt so fast. I know that's hard for people to understand, and you can see it on the website, but because of that, even though that credit card has an ugly interest rate, especially in these times when times are uncertain, I don't want you to give up $25,000 of what might keep you afloat in return for lessening your monthly payments by $400. If $400 less doesn't solve all your problems.
Right. So you're just freeing up $400 in cash flow in essence, and you've lost your chunk of money.
Right.
Right.
Plus,
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. Plus, just to be clear too, the PPP, for example, and some of those funds received from the SBA cannot be used to pay for. Some of it can, but there's some rules about what you can use that money for and what you can't. So typically, just past debt that's not related to the pandemic is not eligible to be paid off with those funds.
Right. And I don't think it's what would be in your best interest. If your business is going to survive and the loan is to help your business, and it may or may not be a forgivable loan, then I think that money probably is best spent on your business to keep you alive. But it sounds like, you would certainly want to look at both personal and business, which is what we were just talking about. How much time do I have left?
We're just out of time, actually. And I was just going to let you know and wondered if you would like to wrap up, Frances, with any steps that a small business owner could take today, this evening, that would give them a better understanding of where they stand financially.
Yes, whether it's through our system or not, to really force yourself to sit down, back out of it for a moment, and don't worry about what the outcome is. Don't look for a bottom line to match, but just get all of your stuff on paper. Take your personal stuff, chunk it out, get all your personal information down. If you have to go back through your checking accounts and your credit card statements and all that to do it, fine. Do the same with your business information. And if you can tolerate that, that is an enormous first step. If you're really at that place where, you know, you're just at your wit's end. I mean, we're all worn down to a nub by the pandemic. And if you've been struggling with your business and your personal finances, you may really just be at a point where you're just there and you're just saying, thanks, Francis, but no, I'm not spending my evening poring over my papers. I cannot do it any longer. What I need is some direction. I need some help. And if that's the case, then I would encourage you to talk to your advisor, talk to your accountant, your attorney, a financial coach like us, reach out to you guys, anybody, and say, I'm on the edge here and I really need help. And that's your first step. Just ask.
Just ask for help. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Well, thank you so much, Francis, for your time today and for enlightening us on this topic. Stay well.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.